Attention to brief. Welcome to the briefing room. I'm your co-host, Matt Bowman, and my fellow co-host, Dr. Tyrone Taborn. This month, during Black History Month, we are going to bring to you four pioneers, four leaders who've helped shape this nation and its military readiness. You're going to hear from history, and you're going to hear the way forward. This is a show by warriors for warriors. This show will teach you how to excel, how to be the top of your craft, and how to raise the bar in everything that you do. The show will start with a countdown around the world in, some people say 7 seconds, but it's really around the world in 7 minutes. We're going to give you military analysis from myself as a former briefer to four-star admirals and four-star Marine generals so that you can gain a perspective, one warrior's perspective on what's going on in the world. Followed by that, we're going to have a very special guest, a pioneer in the naval officer community, a man who is an educator, an entrepreneur, and a leader. So if you're a C-suite executive, you need to stay tuned. If you're a student who's looking to take your life and your career to the next level, stay tuned. But we're going to start off with Around the World in 7 minutes. Staff Sergeant Michael Ollis was recognized this week with the Medal of Honor, the highest award that any warrior can receive in service to our nation. He gave his life in 2013 in the mountains of Afghanistan, protecting Allied soldiers from harm. The account reads that he saved over 40 lives by his selfless act of stopping a suicide bomber from killing those in his unit and those warriors in arms who were there with him. So today I want to take a moment of silence to recognize and to honor Staff Sergeant Michael Ollis. All right, as we continue around the world, in North America, 1,000 immigration customs enforcement officers are leaving Minneapolis. It is an attempt to de-escalate what's going on in Minnesota so that we can get back to some sort of normalcy in regards to the law enforcement civil interactions that are happening. In South America, President Gustavo Petro, the president of Colombia, met with President Trump this week to discuss U.S.-Colombia relations. Super important for the region. For those of you who studied the South American continent, you know how important that Andean Ridge is to U.S.-South American engagements. They say that Miami is the capital of Latin America, but if Miami is the capital of Latin America, then Bogota is the capital of South America. So those conversations critically important. Let's keep an eye on what comes out of those bilateral conversations. As we transition to Europe, I want to show you all a photo. And this is a photo of on one side, the Russians, on the other side, the Ukrainians, and in the middle, the U.S. Delegation. They are in Abu Dhabi, led by Jared Kushner and others, as they try to seek an end to the Ukrainian or the Russian-Ukrainian war that has claimed so many lives. In the backdrop of this picture of these men sitting around a table, there was a massive drone strike by the Russians 2 nights ago against Kiev. So the war continues as the leaders sit around the table trying to bring a close to this conflict. As we go to Asia, the USS Abraham Lincoln just shot down using an F-35, an Iranian drone. The heightened tensions between Iran and the United States have culminated in direct talks between the United States and Iran in Oman this Friday. So that's another area. You know, we talk about keeping eyes on target. We got to keep our eyes on what's really going on around the world. And so that is going on right now. It was warm and now it's getting hot between the United States and Iran. When you go to the African continent, the big news in the last 24 hours is that one of the last remaining sons of Libyan former leader Muammar Gaddafi was killed. Saif al-Islam Gaddafi was killed. No more information has come out, but my sources have just let me know that that is going on. Now, I think it has also now hit the open press that has happened in Africa. And then in Asia, of course, we're all eyes on Taiwan and China. And as the world heats up and as eyes get distracted and start looking, left and looking right, we got to keep an eye that China doesn't take this opportunity to retake Taiwan. So there we go. Around the world in 7 minutes. That is what's going on this week in the military news, February 4th. I'm going to go to a commercial because all of this is brought to you by Bea Stars and Stripes. This is 40 years of becoming everything you are, and we're going to celebrate next week in Baltimore. There are invitation-only events that are going to happen, so if you don't have your invitation, I guess that means you're not invited. If you think you're supposed to have an invitation and didn't get one, reach out to me directly. I'll take a look, and we'll make sure we get the invitation out to you. So if you're a leader, an educator, a retired military officer, and you've been part of the Bea community, part of that 50,000 of us who watch this podcast, then please hit me up and let me know. So we're going to go to a commercial so that you can see all the great things that Bea has done over the last 40 years.
It's the moment in your eyes when the future becomes clear.
40 years ago, a vision was born. To break barriers, to celebrate brilliance.
The hopes of what's in reach.
From pioneers to innovators to tomorrow's dreamers, Bea has changed the landscape of STEM forever. Great minds, great people, great futures. Join us for Bea 40. Don't just watch history, be part of it. Bea, becoming everything you are.
Become everything you are.
Welcome back to the briefing room. I'm your host, co-host Matt Bowman. I'm going to bring up a picture of a gentleman, an admiral, and I want you all to take a look at this picture, and then in the comments, in the chats, let me know if you know who this incredible leader is. So production on the screen, put up a picture of the admiral who we are focusing on, one of the four we're focusing on for Black History Month. All right. So I'm going to, in the chat room, give me a chat. Tell me about this gentleman, if he's touched your life, if he has mentored you, if his leadership has helped you to become one of the top leaders in the world. Put it in the chat and we'll also post it. My guest today is Vice Admiral David Brewer. That is his picture there. He is one of the first African-American admirals, 3-star admirals in the United States Navy. His reach is wide, his impact is deep, and I want to welcome to the Briefing Room podcast my friend and mentor, Vice Admiral David Brewer.
Thank you, Matt. Good to be here.
Thank you. Thank you. Glad to have you. And production, you can take that picture off. It's just going to be me and the Admiral, and we are going to chop it up. Well, sir, as you know, this is a show by Warriors for Warriors, and you are one of our nation's consummate warriors. But it took a lot to create a Dave Brewer. So, sir, if you can take us back to your parents or your grandparents, I want to go back in time. Tell me about your family. Tell me how you came to be the man that you are.
Well, first of all, thanks for having me. A little bit of a interesting background. My paternal grandparents, David L. Brewer Sr. and Zola Redding Brewer, finished Tuskegee in 1912.
In 1912? Okay.
Yes, Tuskegee in 1912. My grandfather majored in bookkeeping. My grandmother majored in homemaking. And they had 4 children, 2 girls and 2 boys. The 2 girls were first and then the 2 boys. My father was the 3rd child. All four went to college. My father met my mother at Tuskegee. Again, the Tuskegee connection, as you say.
Okay.
And they met at Tuskegee and in 1938. And then my father was pulled in 1941 to go to war. So he ended up going to World War II. My mother eventually transferred to Alabama A&M, and she finished from there. And after World War II was over, they reconnected, and they got married in 1944. And then they moved to a historic place called Farmville, Virginia.
Wait,
why is
where is
Farmville,
that?
Virginia? Yes. I was born in Farmville, Virginia in 1946. Why is that important? Because my babysitter in Farmville was a young girl by the name of Barbara Johns. And Barbara Johns, there's a book on her. Barbara Johns was my babysitter. We moved from Farmville and eventually settled in Florida in 1952. But during that era, she led the boycott of R.R. Moulton High School, where my mother taught, which led to the 1954 civil rights decision of Brown versus the Board of Education. And she was a part of that. And she had literally had to move from Farmville down to her uncle, Vernon Johns. James Earl Jones played him, by the way, in a movie.
Okay.
And so they moved her because her life was being threatened.
Now, this is your babysitter.
Yes, my babysitter was Barbara Johns.
So let me get this right. Your grandparents are educated by 1912, probably by
Booker T.
the Honorable Booker T. Washington himself.
Yes, yeah. They knew Booker T.
Then your babysitter, Barbara Johns, is a legend in the civil rights movement. So she probably laid hands on you. Maybe not in the way that we think. She probably had to lay some hands on you.
So that was my beginning. And now, of course, I grew up in Orlando, Florida. I attended the Jones High School, which is the second oldest historically Black high school in the nation, founded in 1895. Dunbar in D.C. is the oldest at 1893. So I ended up at Jones High School, and of course, I finished from Jones High School in 1963. My father taught at Jones High School for 33 years. My mother taught in the public school systems in Orlando, Florida, and Orange County Public Schools for over 45 years. She came out of retirement twice. And
so education's in your
it's all in there. Boy, if I split a verb, man, I got my hand slapped, okay? That was the bottom line. And my aunts were educators. Okay. Unfortunately, my uncle, my father's, the youngest boy, had PTSD coming out of World War II and ended up in the Veterans Administration and that system for the rest of his life. But in essence, I have had education pounded into my head ever since I was a child. My aunt was a college professor. In fact, I ended up going to Howard University initially. Mm-hmm. I stayed at Howard for 3 years. They said, Brewer, you're not going to finish. So I ended up going down to Prairie View in Texas. And guess who was there waiting on me? Sir,
I want to pause there because, some people might miss what you just said. But, with your parents being educators, going to college is probably a foregone conclusion. So,
that was understood. Yeah,
understood. So, can you talk about why would someone from Jones High School go to Howard University? I mean, how old were you? How do you get to Howard University? And,
I was 17. I was 17. I was young, very young. I wasn't 18. I was 17. I finished. I started high school. I started elementary school early because of that. One of those aunts, my Aunt Ruth. My Aunt Ruth started me at 5 years old because I was driving. My parents were finishing up their certificates at FAMU, and I was staying in Jacksonville with my grandparents. And in essence, I was driving them nuts at 5 years old. And so my aunt was teaching at West Louisville Elementary School, so she took me to school with her, and I started at 5. And that's how she started me in school. And guess what she ended up teaching? She ended up teaching at Prairie View A&M University. And so she saw me finish school. This is all going in the book. You can't make this up.
You can't make this up.
You can't make this up. And so she's the one that got me into Prairie View, and the rest is history. I went through Naval ROTC. We'll talk about that in a minute. But at Howard University, I was there during the golden era of Howard. My classmate at Howard University was a little fat boy. He was down playing Blue Rondo a la Turk by Dave Brewer at 17. I said, who are you, man? I love jazz. Who are you? He says, my name is Donnie. I said, Donnie what? Donnie Hathaway. And so after Donnie came Felicia. After Felicia came Debbie. So that was the era of Howard that I grew up in.
Felicia
Richard. as in the
Okay,
Cosby.
okay.
And then Debbie Allen, everybody knows who she is. That's her sister.
So then you're at Howard in the 60s, early 60s.
Yes.
With really, I mean, the coming out of the other part of the civil rights movement, the best and brightest that the nation, that the world has to offer.
Yes, yes. My Howard classmates have done extremely well. They were at another level.
But then you chose.
Felicia Rashad was a year behind me, but you know.
Yes, sir. But then you
went. I ended up going to Prairie View. Let's get to the Prairie View part.
Yes.
So I get down to Prairie View, and at that time, there were no Naval ROTC units at an HBCU. And so President Johnson was still president when they put it in 1968. He said, if there's going to be an HBCU, it's going to be in my state. Therefore, it ended up at Prairie View.
Okay.
So 21 of us started Naval ROTC at Prairie View. 13 finished.
Mm-hmm.
Let's go back. History repeats itself. The first black naval officers were the Golden 13.
That's right.
So history repeated itself. And just as they were stifled because no one thought that they could pass, they were given 8 weeks to pass a 16-week course, and they ended up with a 3.89 grade point average because they studied all night.
Wow.
And even then, they didn't believe it. We were 13. They said, we don't know if these guys are going to make it coming out of an HBCU. We just don't know it. 3 went Marine Corps, 10 went Navy. Of the 10, the 3 Marines stayed their initial tours. 1 stayed a little bit longer, ended up being a very successful captain of an airline, Delta Airlines. He was a senior captain when he retired. And the other 10, of the 10 Navy, 8 stayed on active duty for 20 years or more. Of the 8, 6 rose to the rank of captain.
Wow.
Same as colonel or higher. I was the admiral.
Well,
that was a 60% promotion rate, which is unheard of to go from ensign to captain in the Navy.
And Admiral, we're not talking about 2026. When those 13 of you entered, describe for the audience, because I think people can't even imagine what it's like to be this first class of HBCU Navy ROTC graduates, the weight that's on the shoulders of these 22-year-old young Americans, and they're entering into an environment where they're almost unicorns. They're no one has seen them in years. So describe the environment when you entered into the service.
In 1970, when we were commissioned, there were 0 black admirals and only 5. Let me put my hand up there. 5 Navy captains or colonels. So there were 256 black officers out of 72,000. I want that statistic to hang in there for a minute. So when we hit the fleet, to be honest with you, luckily we were from the South. So we didn't overreact to some of the racial slurs that we were called. I mean, I was called the N-word a lot. And so, but I was from the South. I didn't overreact to it. And we can talk about how I managed that throughout my career. It wasn't until 1971 that Admiral Samuel Gravely was promoted to admiral. And as an aside, because he was a vice admiral when he died, a vice admiral has to bury him. I had that honor to bury him. Wow. And so I get in the Navy, and in my first tour, I was on USS Little Rock we were up in Boston because it was in the shipyard. That tour went fairly well, to be honest with you. But the Navy was hurting for black officers. So rather than letting me go through an operational sequence in my career, which was normal, you should do at least 3 operational tours, the Navy yanked me out after my first operational tour and sent me into recruiting. Why? Because they were hurting for black officers. Remember, less than 300 black officers out of 72,000. So they put a lot of us in recruiting, and to be honest with you, it hurt a lot of us in terms of our career.
That's right.
So they left me in recruiting for 3.5 years.
Wow.
And so oh my God. So I go back to sea aboard the USS California, which is a nuclear cruiser, which at that time was the capital ship, one of the best ships in the United States Navy. And I went aboard that ship as a combat information center officer with hardly no experience. I walked into my first watch on that ship and I failed. Now, the captain was by the name of Floyd Harry Hossmiller,
Okay.
who eventually made admiral. He saw how bad I was, and rather than say, well, this boy ain't gonna make it, I might as well just stick him in a corner somewhere. He put his executive officer on watch with me to bring me up to speed.
Wow.
And I had a successful tour. Fast forward.
So then, sir, okay. I don't want to. I want to take the audience back a little bit so they fully understand the world where the Navy, the world's greatest Navy, would see fit to take a high-performing officer and be compelled to stick you in recruiting. So can you paint a picture of what the civilian world was going through in that time when you were in recruiting? Because, I mean, this was a very tumultuous period in American history. And in the Navy, you had race riots on the Kitty Hawk. I mean, you had so much going on. So can you talk a little bit about that? Why the Navy, would want to keep you in recruiting? Why was that so important to have Black officers?
Because the Black enlisted sailors working for white officers who were not sensitive to them, to be honest with you, not understanding them and treating them a certain kind of way. In one incident on the USS Little Rock, the Black sailors literally almost rioted on the ship. And I was the only Black officer. I'm sitting there to talk to them. The guys, y'all got to calm it down. They literally had the Marines come on the pier because they were afraid that we were going to have a race riot on that ship. So we finally got things calmed down. Gordon Nagler, who was the captain at the time, was a good guy. He took care of me, and he would counsel me, etc. But we had race riots. Kitty Hawk, Hassayampa. We had race riots on ships, and he was concerned that was going to happen to him. But luck, the one black guy was able to calm things down a little bit. Okay, and so because they didn't see, if you're looking at your leadership and you don't see yourself in the leadership, in essence, you're saying, well, why am I here? Yeah, you can be nice to me, but why am I here? Why am I not being promoted? At least some of us being promoted to that level. So in essence, the Navy knew they were in trouble. So they left me in recruiting for 3.5 years because we had to really ramp it up to get more Black officers. It's called leadership by example. Right. So if you have people who look like you in leadership position, and it doesn't mean that you can't work for somebody who doesn't look like you. That's not the point. The point is that you have to be able to aspire to that level, and you see some people who have made it to that level. Therefore, you have some hope of being successful. So that's all that means. It's leadership by example.
And so that word hope is so important, even, when you talk about leadership principles, fundamental leadership principles, but there has to be hope instilled in the whole body from the deck plate all the way to the flag wardroom. There has to be hope for the possibility of high performing, high achieving sailors or soldiers or airmen or Coast Guardmen or Marines to promote.
Absolutely. And I worked fast forward, I eventually worked for Admiral Trost, who was the Chief of Naval Operations. I was his special assistant for equal opportunity. I relieved Admiral Walt Davis, who became he obviously became Vice Admiral Walt Davis,
who we will also have on the show.
Right. So y'all will get his story here shortly. But anyway, so Admiral, he worked for Admiral Trost. So during my era, there was this guy by the name of Tyrone Tabor who had established Black Engineer of the Year, Bayer Awards. And so I convinced Admiral Trost to attend.
Okay.
So that's the kind of influence that I had in that office. My job was to get the Navy leadership out and about to meet with African-American leaders and to meet people like Tyrone Tabor, to understand, because, he was a nuclear engineer and he knew that we needed engineers.
Right.
I said, well, Admiral, if you need engineers, you need to go to Bayer and you need to show your face. And he did. And the number of corporate execs who surrounded him realized that now that he's at Bayer, then I need to be at Bayer. Okay.
Right.
So that's the whole point.
And so then I've heard so many wonderful things about Admiral Trost, so many wonderful things, his vision, his leadership. So here you are working in the Navy Annex or the Pentagon. I'm not sure exactly where. And you work to bring the United States Navy to this conference then. And that had to be almost 40 years ago, because
Yeah, it was.
we're celebrating 40 years.
It was 88 to 90. That's when I
Wow.
was in the job, 88 to 90.
Yes, sir.
And so I brought him there, and he had a good time. He would say, Dave, I'm impressed. I'm impressed. And of course, I learned a lot. Now, keep in mind, I was in this job behind Walt Davis, so I learned a lot from Walt Davis. Y'all gonna hear from him later. So this is all progressive. In other words, you build on the success of others, and that's a big theme of how I became an admiral. Is I fully understood a long time ago that you're only as successful as the success you create in others. That's it. That's been my mantra for all of my career, and the reason I became an admiral.
We're gonna, sir, I want you to hold that idea about the success you create in others. We have a Bayer Stars and Stripes Career Day where we give high school and college students the opportunity to interview leaders like yourself, CEOs, astronauts. I want to go to a commercial where the audience can hear about our Bayer Stars and Stripes Career Day. And then, sir, when we come back, I want to talk with you about mentoring. And I mean, you've had so many mentors. So let's go to commercial for Career Day. And when we come back, mentoring.
Calling all future STEM pioneers, leaders, and career champions. Join us on every second Saturday of the month for the Bayer Career Day. Bayer STEM Career Day is all about creating opportunities for students to venture into the world of STEM through the eyes of professionals. You'll meet mentors and presenters that will give you a sneak peek into the many options available to you in the field of STEM. Hosted by teen ambassadors, you'll find yourself among inspiring peers just like yourself that are aiming high for their future. To take part in the Bayer STEM Career Day on Zoom, visit fullstemahead.us and register for the next session. Again, that's fullstemahead.us. Bayer, becoming everything you are.
A world of careers unleashed. You can get it at Bayer. Become everything you are.
All right, welcome back to the briefing room. I'm your co-host, Matt Bowman, and my fellow co-host, Dr. Tyrone Taborn. Our guest today is Vice Admiral David Brewer. He is a retired Vice Admiral. He is a leader. He is a mentor to many, and he is a pioneer. So as we go through Black History Month, this show kicks off a whole series of what I'm calling the first. It goes from Farmville to the first to the Pentagon. So that's where we're at. So Admiral Brewer, when we ended our last segment, we were talking about the importance of mentoring and mentorship. So, sir, can you talk about mentoring and how you mentor executives and build senior leaders like Vice Admiral Andy Wins and others?
Yeah. Okay. So let me take you back a minute. My toughest tour was on the USS Okinawa. I was set up to fail. That was the racial environment I was in. Okinawa was the worst engineering ship in the Pacific Fleet, and everybody knew it. We were off the coast of Iran during the Iranian crisis. It actually broke down during that mission. We were off the coast for 110 days. It broke down, had to be towed to Diego Garcia to be repaired. It was called the Broke-Anawa rather than the Oak-Anawa. And so no engineering experience. The running joke on my ship at the time, which is USS William A. Stanley, was, hey, Dave Brewer, with your luck, you're going to end up being the chief engineer on the USS Okinawa. The orders come in. I had just gotten off a watch for 6 hours. I was on from midnight to 6. I just laid in the rack to get a little bit of sleep. The executive officer comes into my cabin with orders, and he says, with tears in his eyes, laughing, and hands me these orders. I said, gotta be a joke. But anyway, I ended up being the chief engineer on Okinawa. When I got there, there is a guard, E.J. Hearn, Commander E.J. Hearn, and eventually Captain Don Flowers. We're in the engineering shop at the group. They called me over and said, Dave, we want you to spend 2 weeks with us. So I go aboard the ship, no engineering experience. So I knew the only thing I had was my sailors. If I empowered them, we would be successful. Except for one problem. Some of them say, we ain't gonna work for that end.
Wow.
Okay, so I said, okay, I got two choices. I can go to the captain and say, look, I'm gonna fire this chief, fire that. I said, no, I don't have time. I got to get this job done. I went to the captain. I said, I want you to do this. You put, you drive for show, you put for dough. I said, look, we can drive and you can write commanding officers letters of commendation, and everybody's gonna be applauding and having a good time. But I want you to go to the admiral and ask him to give me a certain number of flag letters of commendation, because they get a point towards advancement. I understood that principle. You're only as successful as the success you create in others. So the same sailors, they called me the N-word and referred to me as the N-word. They didn't know they knew I knew, but whatever.
Right.
So I said, okay, fine. I got 3 of them promoted. All of them were dead in the water in their careers. After that, we had a very successful tour, and I couldn't do no wrong. I learned a lesson from that. You don't let prejudice get in your way.
Sir, say that again for the audience.
You do not let racism or prejudice stop you from achieving your mission. Okay? Get your emotions out of it. Do what you got to do. Now, I'm not saying that you don't shut some folks down. Of course you do. Of course you do. If you got some virulent racist working for you, you don't promote that. But anyway, I was successful. And so fast forward, I make Admiral. I was set up to fail again. Like I said, there's a God. So I went out to Guam. I said, my wife and I said, why in the world are we going to Guam? Because, and then I went to my mentor, Admiral J. Paul Reason, who was the first Black 4-star. And I asked Admiral Reason, I said, what should I do? He says, Dave, go. Because it's better to be a big fish in a little pond than a little fish in a big pond. I was in a little pond, but I was a big fish. I had a highly successful tour. My wife put on the dog out there. She every animal that came out there. So they sent me to be Amphibious Group 3. I had 17 commanding officers working for me. 8 of the 17 were promoted to Admiral, including someone that you all are going to interview, Vice Admiral Andy Wins, was one of my COs.
Wow.
Andy didn't have to worry about a thing. He knew I was going to take care of him. Okay?
Wow.
I made sure he was successful. Okay.
That is so, sir, as we're listening to this twice on this podcast, things that were meant for evil, things that were laughably meant to set you up for failure, ended up being your biggest accelerators.
Yeah, there's one more behind that, but we don't have enough time for that.
No, listen, this is
okay. So after that tour, Amphibious Group 3, 2-star, I was set up to fail again. I was set to be, and one person was involved in one of these, and that anyway, it's a long story. But I ended up going to be the vice chief of Naval Education and Training, which is a dead-end job as a 2-star. That's it. That's a wrap. You're done. Pensacola, Florida. But I go down there and I work with John Crane, good guy, great guy, 3-star, and we started the Navy College program, which is the program that helps sailors get college credit for Navy training. Hold that thought. Career Tech, Navy training, college credit. Hold that thought. So then, Admiral Clark, came down, said, Dave, I want you to go to Military Sealer Command. It's a 2-star job. I said, Admiral, I'm not interested in another 2-star job. I've been a 2-star now for 2 tours. I'm ready to go home. He said, Dave, work with me. He says, go to be Military Sea Lift Command. It's a 2-star. And I will do whatever I can to get you restored to a 3-star. Just work with me. And my wife, very smart woman, she said, Dave, look here. It's better to retire in D.C. than it is down here in Pensacola. It's called job opportunities. So anyway, I ended up going to the job. 12 days into the job, bam, 9/11. Okay, so 9/11 hits. The Military Sea Lift Command is the logistics fleet for the entire military. I had 120 ships. When 9/11 hit and we hit Operation Iraqi Freedom, my fleet grew to 200 and some ships. Bingo, I made 3 stars. Bingo. Okay?
Wow.
All right. God works in mysterious ways. Who could have? So that gave Vern Clark the leverage to take it back to 3 stars. Okay. So I ended up staying in that job for 4.5 years. Go back to Pensacola, Vice Chief of Naval Operations. Vice Chief of Naval Education and Training. Hold that thought. I'd retire. I get a strange phone call.
A strange what?
A strange phone call.
Okay, a strange phone
After
call.
I retired.
Okay.
The phone call said, Dave, someone has nominated you to be superintendent of schools for Los Angeles. I said, who in the H did that? It's out of nowhere.
Right.
Vice Chief of Naval Education and Training. We negotiated with the American Council of Education to give college credit for Navy training. That's what they saw. So in essence,
so they saw innovation.
Yes. So I become the superintendent of schools for LA, second largest school district in the country, 700,000 students, 800 some schools. It was insane. So what did I do? I introduced the Triple Crown program. I introduced high school diploma, career tech license, and an associate's degree. Okay, the Triple Crown program. I said, I want kids coming out of high school, but if they want to go career tech, I said, I went to LA Trade Tech. I said, listen, I want you to work with me. I'm going to have some kids who are going to take career tech in high school. I want them to not only get the certification, but I want you all to award them an associate's degree. All they need is maybe some English and math.
Okay.
Sure enough, some kids ended up graduating that way. So the Triple Crown program, the career tech program in LA was created by me.
Wow. Now,
God works in mysterious ways.
God works in mysterious ways. So there's 2 things. I want to go back because in this show, we talk about leadership excellence, and there's really 7 P's of leadership excellence. Physical fitness, we're going to get to that. You have that. Professional achievement, all the masters and all the degrees you have. Personal finance. But there's 1 P that people don't talk, and that's partnership. When I look at your story, there is a superpower that you have in your story, and that is the brilliance of your wife to help you make right decisions. We call that on this show Domino 1. The first person you tell an idea to, whether they say, nah, don't do it, or whether they give you the right advice. So talk to us about picking the right spouse.
Okay, 47 years.
Wow.
Okay. I watched this. Okay. We had examples. Okay. My parents were married 60 years before my father passed at 85.
Wow.
My in-laws, my mother-in-law and father-in-law, were also married over 60, I think 65 years. My father-in-law passed at 99. My mother-in-law passed at 95. My mother lived to 102. Hold that thought. Okay, so even though her genetics said she was supposed to die much earlier, but it boils down to, and nobody's gonna sugarcoat marriage. Marriage is work. Okay, marriage is work, but you got to listen to each other. That's number 1. You got to listen to each other, and you got to respect each other. And so, in essence, we have survived. And I'll be brutally honest. The Navy is brutal on a marriage.
The Navy is brutal.
Yes. The toughest job in the Navy is being a Navy spouse, a wife. I was extended to go back to that tour when I was in the Gulf during the Iranian crisis. I was supposed to be back around June the 6th, 7th, 8th. We were diverted to the north because of North Koreans were acting up, and I didn't get back until June 12th at 8 a.m. My daughter was born at 1 a.m. on June 12th. So I literally missed the birth of my daughter because I was deployed. That's the kind of stress that the Navy puts on a spouse. So it takes a really special woman, in this particular case, to be a Navy wife. And I'll be honest with you, everybody can't handle that.
That's right.
The 6-month deployments, the 8-month deployments, a lot of people can't handle that. And so my wife deserves 200% credit for my success, because if it wasn't for her, I wouldn't have made it. No way. No. And I mean, you all have to see what she did in Guam. It was off the chain. I mean, 4 stars were showing up. I said, "Why are you here?" Well, we heard about this lady in your house that puts on these affairs. Oh man, it was crazy. It was crazy. But my wife is an educator. She has a doctorate in education, so she's well educated.
Fantastic. You know, sir, I wear this black hat, and you know, it's a signature hat, and this is a show by warriors for warriors. So would you give the audience a sea story, those who are, you know, on the pointy end of the spear, about what it's like to lead men and women, young sailors, 19, 20-year-olds into combat? Talk to them a little bit about that.
Well, you know, I'm gonna give you an example. First of all, as a leader, you got to learn how to listen. Okay, you got to learn how to listen. Two incidents. We were getting ready to deploy when I had my first ship, USS Bristol County, and we were coming out, and we hit a storm. We hit a typhoon going towards Hawaii, and we were in a flat bottom LST. You know, we were rocking and rolling and pitching, and so I'm gonna go. I'm just gonna push through. I'm gonna go. Finally, my sailor said, "Captain, we're taking some hits down here. You need to turn around. You need to turn around." I said, "Oh man, I don't want to do that." But some say, listen to your sailors. Listen to the people who are down there. Listen. Okay. So I listened to them. I turned around. I was the only ship to turn around. And so I turned around. I went with the seas. I called the Commodore up and said, I can't continue on, Commodore. I'm gonna turn around. I'm going with the seas, because we were going into the seas. We were pitching and rolling. So then Bill Terry, who happened to have been the executive officer on the USS Okinawa, God works in mysterious ways. He was my Commodore. Bill Terry, Captain Bill Terry, eventually made Admiral, came out to do an investigation on the damage that was done to the ships that continued on. So Bill Terry flies aboard my ship. He said, "Dave," because he knew me very well, because he was my XO. I said, "Admiral, I wasn't going to continue." I said, "Commodore, I wasn't going to continue down the path." I said, "I had to protect my ship. I had to protect my sailors." He said, "Dave, you're the only one that has sense enough to do that." So that's one example.
Sir, that is a hell of a sea story. I'm gonna leave it there. I have a special surprise guest for you. So
great.
Bring it into the show. Production, bring on my co-host, Dr. Tyrone Taborn.
Hey, Dave.
Tyrone, how you doing?
Hey, sir.
We go way back.
we go way back, and your wife deserves so many honors, man, for keeping up with you.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Protecting us from you.
A lot of energy here.
You're absolutely right, and I think that again, I want to not only thank you for everything you've done, and I've been there with you for so many years and seen your career, but just absolutely, I just want to repeat about the educating part and how you, as the LA superintendent of schools, and what you did. One of the largest school district that I came from in Los Angeles.
Oh yeah.
You became our, you ran that. And that is probably the most political job, even more political than the White House, trying to deal with Los Angeles. That is a crazy point. You know, here's a funny story, Matt, that you may not know. I was the first student to run for a seat on the LA City School Board.
Ooh.
Now, the school board actually appoints a student to sit on the board. I turned 18 in February, when I was at University High School. I turned 18. I got enough votes, and I ran for a seat on the board.
As a high school student?
As a high school student, the first
we have a student representative on the board. Yeah, go ahead.
Right, but they appoint them. I ran for a seat on the board. I came in last place, but then I got to go to Cornell, so that was a good deal. But to go to those forums with all of the other candidates, the professional candidates that were there and had to make the argument. So I learned firsthand how really difficult that job is. And when Admiral Brewer came in and having to deal with those, you know, those trying to get all of those cats in one box, it's a tough thing, because in Los Angeles, unlike other school districts, people run for the office to be a member of the school board. It is not, the members of the school board are not appointed except for the student rep. Everybody else has to actually run. And it's a political jump, because once you're on the school board, you can run for state senator, you can run for all these other offices. So he had one of the most politically charged jobs that anybody could imagine.
Oh yeah, and that's and Tyrone, that's an understatement, because when I walked in, the mayor was trying to take over the school district.
Yeah,
because he was, and the board that brought me in defeated that effort. But he never quit. So 3 of the board members that brought me in eventually left.
Wow.
And then he had enough votes to get rid of me so that he could control the board.
right.
Even though we had let me repeat this. We had the highest academic gains in over 5 years. And we had the highest academic gains of any school district of any major school district in California.
Wow.
So the only way they could get rid of me was to buy me out. They had to pay me to leave because they had nothing else. And the programs that we had created, we had the largest high school graduating class in 30 years. So the metrics didn't fit. Okay. I just didn't know how to play the politics. Could I have gone over and smoothed with him? Probably. But I was focused on mission.
That's right.
Because, oh, by the way, if I had smoothed with him, then I'd have made the school board members who brought me in mad.
That's right. That's right.
So
But
you
let me
that
politics of leadership. Sir, as we talk about this last 10 minutes of the show, I would like both you and Dr. Taborn to give the CEOs who are listening and the superintendents, because we have April 23rd, we have this massive STEM education event. Yes. So can you talk to those superintendents and those CEOs on the politics of leadership?
Well, let me jump in here, Admiral, very, very quickly. One of the things that I see, and I'm going to toss this question to you as well, we see so many great military leaders coming out, and in fact, with our at BEA, we've been actually trying to train folks to go into educational pieces. So I would be very interested in how you see military leadership playing such a critical role as college presidents in the role that you've played as well. But let me answer your question, Matt. I think that CEOs, I think the superintendents, particularly those who are under stress right now, need to remember we're going to get to the other end. But the question becomes, what does our nation look like? We have already lost a generation of kids who have been not socialized because of the pandemic. We've already seen an entire group of men who no longer feel part of society, who hate women, who hate their positions because they have been desocialized. We've now seen new technologies that have come in, the technologies that we're working very hard about training kids in artificial intelligence, quantum, cybersecurity. So there's a whole new threat. Our society is unraveling at so many points. Now, that doesn't mean that's the end of the story.
Right.
This is the beginning of the story in which we now need to step up. The CEOs, the educators, all of us have to understand that we have to double down and work even harder because we have a nation. I would say we have a nation at risk on so many different levels. And the enemy has a vote in this. You know, China's not being quiet. The Soviet Union's not being quiet. A whole lot of other people aren't being quiet. And by the way, the nefarious people aren't being quiet. The most nefarious people in underground economies who are moving forward. So I am not sure that our nation really truly understands that the threat, but our threat is an internal threat. It's not an external threat. And our survival is an internal threat. And that's why I'm so glad that the Admiral has sat on our educational committee at Career Communications Group and given so much impact on the type of curriculum we're developing to try to help our young people move forward.
It's all hands on deck, Tyrone. That's the philosophy. All hands on deck. This country cannot compete globally and cannot sustain democracy unless we have everybody pulling in the same direction. You cannot have a divider in chief. You have to have a uniter in chief. He has to make sure that everybody in this country, or he or she, hopefully we'll get to a she someday, has to be focused on making sure that everybody is empowered. There are enough, as they say, apples in the barrel, if you will, for everybody. Okay, if we do this right. Okay, we've gone through this before. You talk about history repeating itself. We've been through this before. We've watched a nation divided, and what happens? It doesn't work. We watched that during Vietnam. I mean, it was horrible. A nation divided like that is never going to be successful. So we have to make sure that everybody is successful. The young white kid who has been fed this nonsense about that black kid taking my job is nonsense. Okay, that black kid getting a job is probably going to end up creating more jobs for everybody. Mm-hmm. In fact, the reason we have so many immigrants is because we have more supply than we do demand. Mm-hmm. Okay, that's why they come here. It's more than enough jobs and opportunities in this country. Okay, they are. That's why immigrants are so successful. Okay, because they're filling those gaps. We have gaps that we have to fill. And so,
Admiral Brewer and Dr. Taborn, gaps that we have to fill for national security.
Yes.
As I look at the final minutes of this show, and we look at all of Black History Month, this 100 years of celebrating it, this arc of 400 years of Black Americans being in this country, it is about filling the gaps so that this country can continue to rise and be that shining light upon the hill. So, sir, gentlemen, that is going to be the final thought for this show, filling the gaps. Admiral Brewer, I know you have a book coming out, sir. We're going to put that in the STEM City, our 2D metaverse. We look forward, sir, to seeing you at our invitation-only event. So again, to all those who are watching the show, if you don't have your invitation, then reach out to me, and we'll see if we can get you in there. But the room is filled. The future is bright. And this briefing room show, a show by Warriors for Warriors, will see you next week, where our guest will be Vice Admiral Walt Davis, who was the predecessor to Vice Admiral David Brewer, working for the Chief of Naval Operations. Once again, you are your ancestors' wildest dream, and we'll see you next week, same time, same channel.
It's the moment in your eyes when the future becomes clear.
40 years ago, a vision was born. To break barriers, to celebrate brilliance.
The hopes of what's in reach.
From pioneers to innovators to tomorrow's dreamers, BEA has changed the landscape of STEM forever. Great minds, great people, great futures. Join us for BEA 40. Don't just watch history, be part of it. BEA, becoming everything you are.
Become everything you are.